getting ready to jog?
So if anybody doesn't have or wasn't here 2 weeks ago, we have Lego kits in the back of the room to use for today's session.
All right, so we're going to start with the introductions of the content. And I'm going to mute the Orange County line. So if Orange County wants to say anything, please unmute and let us know or use chat. And she said a couple more people are going to come down, but let's start with the intros.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's time to start.
Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, let's get going here today. I know there'll be some other people trickling in, and you guys are probably all excited to get to play with the Legos again. It's going to be a great activity.
And thanks to all of you for saving the front row for these for the new people coming in. It's very kind of you to do that.
Anybody that comes in next will have that opportunity. So the topic of today, if you remember last week, we talked, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about thriving during change. We had some fun with our Legos and changed up the directions and worked on how you adapt to those moments. And today we want to talk further about this concept of efficiency. So by way of introduction, in Orange County, they have, I moved the screen, but we have Ravi and Renee down in Orange County as supporting us. And up here today, we have the trio of support that we will make sure you are building with your Legos responsibly and enjoying today. Have Stephanie. And so if you've ever watched the Mindfulness Mondays, she's our online star regarding that. And Jonathan, who you've had an opportunity to meet a few times virtually and now in person, time to be here. So excited to have everybody engaging and interacting. And we'll keep things moving here. So this is a series. We post all of the past events, so you guys can always reference both the workbook materials and the subject matter that we go through. Every week, we have a moment of mindfulness, the idea being that we want you to remember that while you're getting busy, you're still human and you need to take a moment and reset so that you can do better work and have a better quality of life. That fits into the overall series. If you look at how all of these are laid out, from planning to succeed to February 16th, we didn't update, but it will be a wellness combination. So you'll get the opportunity to have Stephanie be your main presenter and walk you through all of, not all of, a lot of what makes up the concepts of mindfulness and how while things get really busy and you start to feel that thermometer reach a boil, it gives you an opportunity to cool down and reset a little bit, because that's not a healthy way to live. From a point of our philosophy at True Cycle Coaching, and again, I'm Joe Lerner. I'm one of the founders of True Cycle. We want to take you through the opportunity to look at what is your mindset around efficiency, defining it. What is your skill set around efficiency? So are you efficient as an individual? Are you potentially more efficient as a team? And then we want to look at the behavior. Each of us has a natural gift, a natural talent in how we operate. And how does that interact with other people to provide the best opportunity to be efficient? So this brings us, it's on here. Everybody has their workbook. So what I'd like to do is just give you a minute to define what efficiency is, or write down your expectations for today based on what we just shared about this session. So I'll just take a minute, fill that out. 20 more seconds. So we're asked you to help define your expectations around what you hope to learn about this session today. And what I want to remind you of is we put everything in this context of action, ambition, and aspiration, the AAA. So anytime you take on a project, in this case, efficiency, maybe you think about daily efficiency, monthly or annual efficiency, and then aspirationally in the future. So whatever might be a challenge today, by the end of the year might be easier. And by the end of 5 years, it might just be something you're helping other people master as well. So I want to just point that out, that this model plays a part in many ways of what we approach and the philosophy of how to live. So it can work for you personally and professionally. The other important thing is, as employees here at Andersen, is how the core values play out. So which of these 5 values do you feel is most aligned with this concept of efficiency?
And there's no wrong answers, and there are 5 to choose from. So I feel
Yeah.
confident that we can. What do we think?
Go ahead.
Stewardship can definitely improve efficiency if people work together.
Okay, so stewardship, which is defined as hiring the best and brightest, yet inefficiency in being more efficient, stewardship could definitely support that. Anybody else have a thought about a word that might fit efficiency?
Transparency.
Transparency?
So why is that? Where did you choose transparency?
Well, to be efficient, sometimes if you lack of information that somebody will share with you, you will be more productive.
So being transparent means more access to information, which helps you be more efficient. Excellent, thank you. Any
I
third?
think we have one more hand.
Oh, I was gonna say seamless,
Yep, why is that?
because seamlessness to me is like synonymous with efficiency. Moving obstacles, things that get in the way.
Okay, so seamless, removing obstacles, things that get in the way, and even in the end of the definition is highest level of client services regardless of location. So there's a certain efficiency of cooperation, which actually ties nicely to stewardship in terms of people working together to achieve a goal. Anyone else? Please.
And then it's just being like, to the client, it's important that, like it says,
So efficient independence as efficiency is more than just the platform. It's actually the individual and making those choices for your client. Great. Thank you very much. So
Anyone want to advocate for best in class? The only one we haven't chosen yet. Kind of self-explanatory, probably. That's being the best in class means that we're efficient and doing good work. Yeah, no one took the easy one. That's good.
I know
We like that.
fundamentally, that's actually the expectation was that everybody would be like best in class, because that means everything just goes. So it is fun to,
We're taking notes on these. We're
no,
like,
it's,
wow.
it's great to hear that you, part of the fun of those, and I really appreciate you guys answering back, is the opportunity to hear a different perspective helps you grow your thinking. Right, so there's a wonderful opportunity in there. And so you guys already have started today off as great explorers. And I always recap this because we want you to always recognize time is going to always be passing. So if you are going to be in the room today with us, work on the mindset of not being a prisoner, observe what's happening in a positive way and explore what's possible. Right, that's a positive way to frame it rather than saying I have to be here or I'm just going to look around. I'm not going to say anything. Really appreciate when you guys pitch in, participate and share. It really makes it better for everyone to learn.
So as we get into this conversation about efficiency, this is a quote we enjoy. Don't equate activity with efficiency. And I think all of us can have some of those tasks that feel like, cool, I loaded on my to-do list with those easy things, get rolling. I like to think about that as the productivity candy. Like we did it, but it's kind of empty in the sense of are we actually furthering and moving forward with our bigger goal? So it's, and not that it's wrong to, to maybe need to warm up, knock those things out, but I think it's important to look at what is actually efficiency versus maybe we're just doing activity. Maybe we're doing things, but are we doing the most important things? And so as we look to, so this class is about efficiency and I think we all know that efficiency is a good thing, right? We like it, but how do we actually define it? What does efficiency actually mean? We're going to dive into that together, but we're going to start with take 30 seconds, think about for yourself what your definition of efficiency is, and then we'll get 3 people to share what you think efficiency is, and then we'll dive in more together. So take 30 seconds. You've got a space there. Write down what you think the definition of efficiency is. Probably no wrong answers, although we've been surprised before, but dive in there and then let's look at that together. Take about 10 more seconds. If you're going to dictionary.com on your phone, probably not needed. It's all right. All right, let's get 3 examples. We got one right here.
I would say getting something completed and completed correctly in the quickest way possible.
I get something completed correctly in the quickest time possible. To hit some great aspects there. We've got a couple more. Yeah.
I wrote efficiency is completing a task or mission with the least amount of resources. Because like 2 people can't have the same mission and both of them can be effective and both complete the mission, but if one does it with less resources, they're more efficient.
Yeah, so looking at leveraging the resources correctly, so getting the most done with the fewest resources, which could be time, could be the number of people, could be the number of meetings. You've probably experienced that before. What's one more? Yeah. Minimum input to create maximum output. So I love that, and I love all those answers. And yeah, and we'll so in a bit, Joe's going to get to the exact measurement and how we're going to measure it. So here's some things we brainstormed, which are going to overlap, obviously, which is good. So some elements could include focusing time on what matters. So as you mentioned, using time in the best way possible, not focusing on what doesn't matter. So not being distracted by the things that are not important. That's that productivity candy. And that could be hard because maybe it doesn't matter to you, but it matters to that person. And so figuring that out. Matching time to the right activities. And so that's certainly something that we've seen, that you may be working on a project, you work really hard and you go to turn it in, and then you find out that the person who you're working with is out for the next 2 days. You're like, oh, well, now I could have done it the next 2 days while you're out, and now I've got these. So matching the time and looking at that bigger picture and not just getting so focused in. Matching the energy to the right activities. So with mindfulness, that's one of the big things for me, is identifying when do if my best focus time is in the morning, I probably want to try not to schedule meetings in the morning. If that's my time to focus, other people may not agree with your plan. And so we work with that in terms of when meetings are scheduled. But if you can plan that and know that, identify when is your best energy, and then you can get the most out of that time in that way. Avoiding bottlenecks. So so looking at the bigger picture, and if 2 of you are working on something and there's one of you needs the item from the other person, recognizing that, okay, how do I make sure that we don't all run into needing the same resource at the same time? How do we work together to leverage resources? And then clean transitions and handoffs, identifying when you're working with other people, how do we not have a loss that comes from working with each other? So, so good job. I like your definitions, and I think we've hit on the time aspect, the energy aspect, and the results aspect. Because when we were talking and planning, there's I don't know, has anyone ever done archery before? Got one hand right up there. Love that energy. So when have you done archery? What's your background with archery?
I actually did it on vacation last year. It was great. It was so fun.
Love it. Yeah. So I've done it a couple times at camps, that sort of thing, and it's not the easiest. And I think my first couple shots were pretty terrible. One thing they look at in archery is the difference between precision and accuracy. So precision is your ability to repeat the same shot, hit the same point. But if you're very precise and not hitting the bullseye, then that's not very accurate. So you can be precise, you can be really focused, and you can be doing the same thing over and over again, but if you're not hitting the target, then you're not accurate. So think about accuracy versus precision as you're working through your plans and analyzing what's working. And yeah, so now I know that you're burning to use your Lego kits that you have here. And so hopefully those of you who were here before brought them, and if you weren't, you grabbed one. And so I'm gonna hand it over. Let Stephanie walk us through this.
Okay, now we create. Now we create. Some of you have already been playing with your Legos. That makes me so happy to see that. So open up your box and you are going to, on your own, create your own definition of efficiency with the Legos. Ready, set, go.
And you can define what that means. So whatever that means for you, define efficiency with your Lego. And we will look at interesting ones and ask you what your thought process was.
Be ready to share.
I see some people were efficient and started building before the. Okay.
That looks like to you.
So 1 minute left for Orange County, 1 minute. We're gonna get back into talking about what we built.
Right, okay, so I'm looking for a couple people to share, 2 to 3 people to share what their little creation. Yeah, let's see what.
So I just kind of started making a box, because I don't know, it seemed natural to me, it seemed efficient. And I remember as I was building, I was like, wait a second, let me like get the colors together. I'm like, wait, that's not efficient, that doesn't matter, because it was taking it apart to redo it, and it's going to be the same shape anyway, so then it was, I don't know, I thought the whole experience.
Can you hold up,
Yeah,
hold
yeah.
up your box for them to see? Lovely box.
Yes, yes. Anyone else? Someone else? What is your, yeah, go for it.
I can't lift mine up because it has no structural integrity.
Oh, we can see.
It goes as long as possible in the fewest number of Legos. Nothing is connected by more than one.
Okay, very good. So for those of you who can't see, he built a long, like a chain ish, using as many Legos to make, or as few to go as long as possible. Love it. Very different. Anybody else have an example?
I made a little part, but with an artist, because I'm trying to your arches are very efficient.
Ah, I love it. Used a little person in yours and the arch. Right, so the one that was held up, there was an archway, and that arch is a very efficient architectural piece. Excellent job. Thank you for sharing.
But and notice that we talked earlier about inputs and outputs. You all had the same inputs, literally, but we got very different outputs because you defined for yourself what efficient means. Did it mean the shape that was the square, the most efficient, or defining it by the longest you could have? Like totally, your shapes look very different, yet you both made things that were efficient. And then we have a park, so we have something that has utility as well and use number of pieces. So very cool. We will use the Lego blocks again, so be prepared for that. So one thing that we noticed, so here we had one shape that was a box. It was structurally strong, not very tall. I know that that's long, and so there's always going to be trade-offs in efficiency with the thing that you're going to get. So we can look at that's the trade-off between efficiency and quality. So you've probably been on projects and felt like, if I had twice the time, I could do such a better job with this. Has anyone experienced that before? One person has, thank you. And so that's that trade-off, and that's going to be something that's with us our entire career. A lot of what you're balanced, you want to be on multiple projects, you'll be on exciting projects, but you have to balance those things. And so we have to, and when I was in graduate school, they used the term satisfice. Has anyone heard that term before? And maybe a made-up word that they did. Can anyone guess what that might mean? Yeah, so it's satisfy and suffice. So you did enough to satisfy the requirements. You did it, you passed. And so it's good to look at what are the requirements and understand what are the timing requirements. And if you finish something perfectly and it's turned in a week after it was due, then we satisfied one requirement, but not the other. And part of efficiency is being able to accomplish things and satisfy all of those requirements. So satisfice, yeah, satisfied sufficiently. We did enough. And so it doesn't mean that we don't love quality. That doesn't mean that great quality work can't set you apart. You just have to look at what are the requirements for the situation and how can you best use the resources you have to accomplish what you need to accomplish. I've definitely been in situations where I felt a trade-off between efficiency and relationships, where it's like, this person needs my help, but I also need to do this other thing. How do I balance that? How do I keep other people happy while making sure that I'm accomplishing what I need to accomplish? And so, again, it's not that relationships are not as important as efficiency. It's not that quality is not important as efficiency, but these are the trade-offs that we have to do when we're figuring out how to best use our resources. And then for all of you looking at billable hours, how do we make sure that we're hitting the right level of billable hours we need to while hitting our efficiency? That's another variable that you're needing to accomplish. And so for me, efficiency it's kind of like a math problem, right? It's kind of what we said at the beginning, outputs compared to inputs. And so these are variables that we want to handle, because if we don't, then over time we're going to struggle with some of the results. So anyone have any questions about that? Does all make sense so far? Cool. So some of you may have heard this story before. If not, you will now. So imagine that there's a pottery class with a great master, and he is the best at making pottery. He makes amazing pottery, and so people come from all around and want to work with him. And so the first class, all the students come in, and he says, to become a master, there's one of two ways that you can do this. You can either take the time and study and work to make one perfect pot, one perfect piece. Or some people will prefer taking the second route, go and make 100. Just go make 100. Don't worry about perfection, but worry about just getting as many as you can done. So half the students went one way, half the other way. Does anyone have a guess for which students made the better pottery by the end of the allotted time? Okay, the 100. Why is that? Because they had more practice. So I think that in that story we can see that there's a lot we can do. There's a lot we can learn. This was the master, so you could go look at the perfect pots. You could look at that, but nothing can actually replace that time on task, that focus, and that going out there and trying things. And so something we want to encourage you to think about as you're going. Sometimes it's better to jump in and try things than to necessarily try to create the perfect pot when it's the first one you're ever trying to do. So now that we've defined efficiency, and you all did a good job of helping with that, we're going to talk about how we're going to measure it.
So what comes to mind when we talk about measuring efficiency? Anything? I spend a lot of time commuting up here, like literal time. When I'm in the car, what's one of the efficient things I might think about in the drive? Go ahead. You could be thinking elsewhere. That doesn't make you the best driver, yet your brain could be elsewhere. That's true. What I was thinking about really is miles per gallon, right? So I have a car, I have two different cars. One's from 2003, gets about 18 miles to the gallon. And I have another car that's just about a year old that gets about 40 miles to the gallon. So depending on how I'm driving up here, sometimes I think about, oh, am I being efficient driving this car to LA today? Because it's going to use twice as much gas, and I need to be aware of that. So when we measure efficiency, there's some sort of standard by which you're looking at it. And when you're looking at that, you're thinking about input and output, right? So you're familiar with this concept, what you put into something and what you expect to get out of it. So in my analogy, when I go to the gas pump and I'm filling up the tank, I can see that I need to put more input because the output I requested was less efficient in one of the two cars. That makes sense? So when you think about that for yourself, what other things do you think about where there's a percent compared to a perfect result, and how do you settle for that? Did anything come to mind? I like the idea of in your head, thinking through multiple things. Definitely a way to think about your output later. Anything else come to mind? Go ahead.
In terms of like the driving example, or
Any example that comes to you. I was using that just because it's a couple-hour commute each time, and I realized when we talked about what 100% efficient would look like.
well, I think that like I'm very to like exercising regularly, because like it does increase I've noticed that there are days where I don't feel good, and then like you'll get in when you get out, because like
Okay.
you put in the more of the time that you feel like you need to, and you'll feel better as a result after you do it. So I feel
Okay.
like that's a good example of, like,
So actually taking the time to exercise gives you better output because you carved out some time to. And what do you think happened in terms of your input output by taking the time? Did anything suffer?
No, I think that if anything, it gives me a sense of calmness. I think that it kind of makes me improve mentally too. I think that like sometimes when I get stressed out at work, I'm like, maybe just take like 30 minutes to like do like a light.
Excellent.
Workout is helpful, and just kind of it just gets you in a better mental place too.
Perfect. So what you've done is outline perfectly my next slide, which is this idea of in an hour. And I appreciate you talking about how exercise makes you more efficient because your stress level comes down, you're able to focus again, sense of calmness that can come over you versus the anxiety of knowing how much work there might be. So when you consider an hour on any project, How many hours are you actually working on the project? Like, have you ever thought about that? I know you guys track, does everybody in the room track their time? All right, so when you're tracking your time, do you feel accountable to a certain amount of production in that hour? And have they told you a standard? Everyone's shaking their head yes here. I can't tell in Orange County. But in terms of when you think about that time and you're thinking about what they expect, given the example you just shared about, sometimes you get a little stressed out, you feel a little tired, you lose your focus. So scientifically, of a 60-minute focus, at around minute 40 to 45, most people need some sort of reset. They need a break. They need to log on to the mindfulness minute and take a breather, take off your shoes and become aware of something. And that shift, it doesn't mean picking up your phone and scrolling for 5 minutes, because that's still using your brain, even if it's mindless use of your brain. It's literally like choosing to exercise, choosing to clean up your room or something, whatever it is that's not related to work, that allows you to then be focused and back in on the project. As a company, does Andersen share an expectation of from your billable time to administrative time, what the amount might be?
Yes.
Is that a percent?
It's mainly just like they just tell us how many hours a day billable they want.
Okay,
Make it in time period, depending on the year,
okay.
season.
But is it more than 50-50 or 70-30, something?
It's, it's more than 50-50.
So like if it was 70, just to use a number, and we said in an hour, how much time should you be actually doing work? So that's roughly 42 minutes of the hour. That works really well for the formula we're talking about to give you some mental health in the process. So think about efficiency in work, especially, I think right now, most of you are in a down season versus the up season that's coming in the next month. Is what habits can we create to be more efficient in the work we're doing? And then when we think about the work we're doing, there's two main things that come up for a lot of people. Have you ever heard the phrase paralysis analysis? Right, you just get stuck thinking about something. Now, oftentimes when people get stuck thinking, in this case, we used a train analogy. Sometimes you'll miss the train. You can't decide where you're heading and the train's going to leave the station, right? Other times people fail to plan. In this case, the tracks just ended. They didn't meet up with the other direction and where things are going. So when you think about the work you're doing, recognize that anything can be done to an extreme. It's important to know, number one, what the decision is you're making and to set a limit. And it's also important to have a plan, right? To get lost in planning would be inaction, and to spend so much time thinking about something would be inaction, right? So just keeping that in mind. And during busy season, recognizing where those are.
So that can be a hidden drain on efficiency. This is either planning too much or planning too little. We have a couple additional hidden drains on efficiency we want to run through. One is the idea of switch costs, how much time it takes you to move from one project to another. And especially you've got notifications coming in that can pull us out. So they say on average, if you're doing deep work, focused work, it can take 15 minutes to get back into what you were doing. So all of a sudden you're like, what was I even working on? It can take 15 minutes. And that's a huge part of if that happens 10 times, that's a lot of time. So focusing on those switch costs. Same thing with the distraction costs, these other things coming in, reprioritizing your day. And so as much as possible, we control what we can control. And if you focus on that first, then you're more likely to be able to handle when there are distractions, but also recognizing how can we eliminate some distractions. And then direction changes, this idea of if a project changes direction, then we've got rework, then we've got maybe some catch up to do. So being part of the planning process for that and avoiding those direction changes. And then we already discussed how it could affect driving, multitasking is something. And so we're actually going to demonstrate the impact that multitasking can have. And so we're going to have Stephanie come back up and do that for us. So if everyone can get ready with a piece of paper, do it on the back of your page here.
So, thank you. Okay, so in a spot, you don't need much room, but you need some blank space, a pencil, a pen, and then you need to time yourself. Okay, so if you have your phone, remember we decided,
All time.
are you gonna?
Whoever's done first raise.
Okay, all right, we changed tactics. Perfect. So round one, you're going to write as quickly as you can. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, ready, set, go. Oh, that was quick.
Okay, so that was 3.4 seconds.
3.4 seconds. Okay. All right. Can you guess what's next? All right, when I say go, you're gonna write down A through J as quickly as you can. Ready, set, go.
3.7.
3.7. You're not competitive at all, are you? Okay. All right, so now your challenge, when I say go, is you're gonna write 1A, 2B, 3C, and so forth. Raise your hand when you're done. Ready, set, go.
All right. We'll call it
11,
11.
9. Okay, what did you notice?
I had to think more.
You had to think more, which round?
The last round, because like the other ones are so natural when, counting ABCs.
So you've had lots of
Exercise a little.
practice writing your ABCs, 1, 2, 3s,
Yeah.
but not a lot of practice doing. Okay. Any other observations? What did you notice? What did you feel?
I think I heard a missed G somewhere in the background. So yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. So the quality
little lack of
goes
efficiency.
down a little
there, yeah.
bit. We got to go back and what was that letter?
Time wise, it took 50% longer.
50% longer to do that combination of activities. Can you make a correlation between what we've been talking about and what you just did? How could you make that last activity more efficient? Is there a solution to that?
You have to practice.
Your
I think.
time, even if it means like. moving longer.
Sure, so you make a little bit of a sacrifice in time, right? And then practice, lots of practice with 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, but together, right? So that 100 pots analogy, right? Just diving in. Excellent. I didn't hear you say that.
Writing 1 through 10 and then A through J.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, more efficient. You've seen the levels of efficiency in the different ones. And yes,
I was gonna say the same thing, whereas it was harder to think about both at the same time, and so halfway through, I just kind of switched it and just did the first, and then went back to the alphabet, and it was a lot easier. So
love that. So strategizing based on how your brain works and what your strengths are, that worked for you. Excellent, excellent job.
All right.
All right.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Mhm.
So what I want to also help you remember, and you did a great job sharing, at least perfect timing, is this idea that if you complete one task completely, and then the other task completely, that it took 50% less time. So from a time perspective, it was 3.4 and 3.7 seconds to do each one. And when you combined them, that's 8.1, and the other one took 11.9. So thinking about getting all the way through something, how would you rate your product? So actually, since we're in this here, I can.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Huh? We'll do this one. So in your workbook on page 4. Taking into account the work you're doing or have recently done, thinking through what's there. I know, I just don't want to see you fall as you're like making your way forward. So on page 4 there, thinking through a recent project you've been working on. Take into account these 3 questions. We're going to take 4 minutes or so to do this activity. How would you rate your productivity on the project? Knowing what we've talked about today from an efficiency perspective, what got in the way that you could address next time? And that becomes the 3rd one, which is where can you change your approach going forward?
And so notice you're rating your productivity, not the other people's productivity. We don't have time for that. So focus on your productivity.
And I'm going to start the timer now. So thank you.
No. I'll share that one. I'll send it in my. I want it. So. All of these are like.
Oh, yeah, smooth marble. So 1 minute and we'll jump back in here. 1 minute warning there. Turn that on.
So you want to talk here about some of these projects? Can someone share, for the first one, how you rated yourself on the project? You want to share for that one? That's a tough one, right? Yeah, what you got? Thank you.
So I was, we have to talk about like the project. at all?
Whatever you want to say. It's your floor.
It's something I've never done before.
Yeah.
And I'd say from like 1 to 10, my productivity on that was like a 6 or a 7,
Okay.
because and what got in my way on this was I've never done it before, and I've had instructions of what I need to like look at, but I didn't know how to do it. And I was trying to figure it out on my own a little bit. So, because I'm more of a hands-on type person. But I think if I would have just like asked my question, and they did ask questions, if I would have just maybe spent maybe 5 minutes looking it over, then asked my questions instead of trying to figure it out on my own, I would have been able to get it done and learned much faster.
So you would prefer to make 100 pots? Is that fair of those two?
I did prefer.
Yeah. So, okay, you said 6 or 7. How did you choose that number? Like, what criteria did you use?
Just how long it took and kind of like what was involved in getting it done.
So kind of the input, output,
Yes.
sort of thinking. Cool. Thanks for sharing. Okay, can we get 2, let's get 2 more. Yeah,
First off, I had that exact same experience a couple of times this week, so.
Yeah.
I would have said almost the same thing, but another thing I feel like got in my way that was, being. Not knowing where responsibility was allocated.
Mhm.
People kind of passing around you get on an email thread and there's no one is given direct agency in the email thread.
right.
So you wonder and you circle back to it and you go through the same things over and over and just like. If one person thought, oh, it's my job to solve this problem right now, it would be solved very quickly, but instead it gets stretched out.
Yeah, group emails can definitely be like, someone do this, and you're waiting for that volunteer. But who the driver is and who's accountable, like those are some awesome things to look at for efficiency. If you look at a situation and it's not clear who the driver is, who the decision maker is, then we could be looking at a inefficient situation. Cool. How about one more?
So I did like a project that was like, I was very familiar with, so first the client had done it many times before, so I felt pretty productive. I liked what was asked of me, but then I think the way that the person that had asked me about it was doing it, I felt like there wasn't enough clarity, so I had to ask someone else being like, well, what does this mean? And so that kind of got my way a little bit, but then obviously when I asked someone else, they're like, oh, it means this, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, I've done that.
Yeah, so sort of, so you're saying what got in your way is perhaps instructions that weren't as clear, or maybe instructions could be taken multiple ways.
Yeah.
And so being able to define what the finished product, being able to define the output is good. We need to be able to define that to be able to move forward. Yeah.
I hope this is relatable, but maybe people are working on a client project and they don't have all the data because the client didn't submit it all. I think it slows everything down, so it's best to just respond to that client as soon as we can within like 24 hours. Hey, look at the data, we still need to move forward.
Yeah. And so quickly getting from the clients what you need is probably something that I would imagine several of you have experienced. I would guess. So cool. Well, thank you for sharing those. The idea here is that as you're working on projects in the future, to think about efficiency, think about what are the things we can do to continue to grow projects. And the more you can get done in the same amount of time and same amount of energy, you'll be better off. So we have a special guest here. So
Like special because I'm. No.
Rolling mobile.
Rolling mobile. Hi, everyone. Good morning. I recognize most of you, but for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Vernalisa McCloskey, and I'm an MD in the commercial tax practice. I've been at Andersen this go around, or Andersen 2.0, for over 3 years. However, I started my public accounting career at Arthur Andersen a long time ago. And I was there until the end. I was there until 2002. And I've always been in the commercial tax realm, but I want to give you a little background because we're talking about efficiency. I actually did a rotation. First of all, when I made senior at Arthur Andersen, I was a CPA with a personality, and the campus recruiting team recruited me into campus recruiting, and I was 24 years old, and I said, I think I'll try it. And so I did purely campus recruiting for about a year. And as much as I love interacting with everybody and the students, I missed the client interaction. I missed the technical part of what I did. So I did come back into the tax practice. And back in the day, at least 20 some years ago, back in the day, you had to have audit hours to become a CPA. Like there was no the different routes that now exist. So I had to do some audit hours. So I've taken advantage of the professional services firm. Like I've had, some time in the HR recruiting realm and in the practice realm. So I mentioned that to everybody because as an associate back at Arthur Andersen, it's funny because I remember partners at the time would tell me, we used to do everything by hand and by carbon paper. So most of you don't even know what carbon paper is, right? But they take like carbon paper and then they write and it copies 3 pages. So don't make a mistake because you can't erase anything, right? And so you would have thought that throughout this period that everything would take a lot less time because of technology compared to doing everything by hand. I'm not sure that that's the case. And I haven't exactly solved the problem of why it's still taken time to do, back in the day where they used to do everything by hand. As an associate or as a senior, so most of you, I think in this room are associates and TAs and seniors, I want to say that efficiency and time management is almost easier because you're given certain projects and you've got 4 or 5 things to accomplish, right, at any given point in time. As you grow into your career as a manager, a senior manager, and a partner, you're having to answer like up ways, down, I'm dealing with clients, I'm dealing with HR, I'm dealing with other partners. And so efficiency is a lot more important, right? And I just want to give that introduction to this discussion because it's easy to I have to break out my days into like these 2 hours will just be for recruiting. These 2 hours will just be for this client project. And sometimes it's not such a perfect model, right? Because you're going to get emails and you're going to get phone calls and somebody's going to go into your office. So my high level answer to efficiency is boundaries. And I struggle with that sometimes because I do like to exercise an open door policy. So one of my specific kind of desires of the things I like to do is to be in touch with the people I work with. So if, Andrew has a question for me, I'll say, just give me 50 minutes and come on in. And so I really like the time that I spend with just talking to all of you and answering questions that you may have. And so, but I'm not as disciplined in like saying, I will only take those calls between this time and this time, and then this time and this time. And I would say an efficient day for me would be if I could stick with my 2 hours here, 2 hours here, and 2 hours here. And I'd say I'm successful in doing that maybe once or twice a week. I mean, that's just the truth of it because I'm juggling so many different things. But like I guess suggestions would be, again, boundaries, right? Like one of the things one of my managers said to me when I was associate, second thing, before I had children, I had children when I was already a senior manager. I waited a long time, but before I had children, I had an infinite amount of time to work, right? Like to divulge to work. And all of a sudden, like once I had children, I really had a finite amount of time for the office and I had to be more efficient, right? And so the boundaries had to be more succinct. And so one of my advisors at the time, or my coaches at the time, said to me, put it in your calendar like it's a meeting, right? Like, maybe you're going to go take your kid to a baseball practice or something, like, and don't veer away from that unless it's absolutely urgent, right? Like, make sure you have time for the stuff outside of your workday, right? Like, and I thought, wow, that's amazing, because back then, it's different today. I mean, I think we're a little bit more cognizant of everybody's work-life balance, but back in the day, it's like almost as if you had to be a martyr, right? And I had to really set those boundaries. But from a pure practical perspective, like suggestions, that's the first thing. Color code your calendar. Like these 2 hours is for one of these clients, and then these 2 hours I'm just going to deal with emails because I have 100 emails, right? And then these 2 hours I'm going to take care of the 3 big things that I said I would do today, right? And so that's an efficient day for me. Usually I carry something over to the next day, but that's okay, right? That's okay. And that's the second thing. It's not going to be perfect, right? Some of you are going to be more organized than another person. And you just got to find your lane. You got to find where you're comfortable and where you're feeling like, oh, I've put in a good day's work without feeling overwhelmed. I want to answer these questions that Joe kind of gave to me. So that's how I measure efficiency for myself. For the team, how do I measure efficiency for the team? So if every button is striking correctly, right? But that all depends on planning, right? And I'd like to say that I have like a team meeting in the beginning of every project, but sometimes that doesn't happen as well. But I want to say that if you have a team meeting at the very beginning of the project and talk about aspects and who's doing what, right? Camelia's doing the engagement letter and, and Sean's doing something else, then everyone has their responsibilities and everyone could be, that team could be theoretically efficient, and a regular meeting is definitely very, very helpful. So I measure efficiency where communication is really good, and we're all, nowadays we could set up a team group chat where we just update everybody on where we are with the projects. Somebody already said it earlier, emails can go on and, I can get 20 emails on one subject and you're like, okay. So sometimes maybe it's easier to just do a group chat. So at the end of that project, so efficiency could be measured by time, is it timely, right? Is it done as correct as we can get it to be? Were we able to discuss it with the client, et cetera? So that's how I would measure the efficiency. How well did we do that? That was the client satisfied with what we did, et cetera. And then I want to make sure I'm not. And then the last question that Joe wanted me to touch on was, how do I balance billable hours versus working on the system? So, I'm sure all of you, right? Like you get charge numbers and you have to keep track of your time. When you get to an MD level, you're working on the business more on, there's less time on client detail work. And I'm probably in 3 meetings a day talking about compensation, strategy, personnel issues. So for me, it's an easy measurement. Like I want to make sure that I have at least 40% billable time during the day. So I have an 8-hour day. If I can have 4 hours of charge, I know that's for me, not for this group, but if I have a 4 hours of chargeable time a day, right, that's pretty efficient for me, right? Because that means I was able to deal and check on my clients as well as deal with all of the business or HR or administrative type items that I have to deal with. Keep in mind, like some of you that's put together a budget for a project, right? It's a pyramid, right? So the associate has 60 hours and then 30 for the senior and then 15 for the manager and 7 for the partner, right? Because that model is by design, right? Because everyone has a different role in that project. So 4 is a good day for me, right? That's how I balance the two. So did I cover all the questions?
Sounds awesome. And what I appreciate is part of efficiency is having a process, not perfection, just recognizing. So I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing that this is the goal and these are the results. And it's not that there's a right or wrong, it's that we're working towards more efficiency and that balance between the personal and professional. So thank you for sharing.
Any questions, comments? No? Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Continue to heal quickly.
I will. 2 weeks I'll be running, you guys.
Yes. So when you were each debriefing the recent project, for a couple people, some team issues came up. So what are some ways that being on a team can be more efficient than doing a project by yourself?
split up the work.
Split up the workload. Okay, yeah.
You can utilize people's strengths.
You go to strengths. Makes sense, yeah. What are some ways that a team could be less efficient? What's that? Lack of communication. Maybe poor communication could be one, yeah. If it's not organized and there's not a goal, yeah, and so then all of a sudden we're all moving a direction. Is it a good one? I don't know, but we're moving, we're moving. So when we think about acting as a team, it's good to think through whether you're a member of a team, a leader of a team, co-leader of a team. You don't know if you're the leader of the team in any way that you have it. We can set up different rules of engagement for that team. So I like to think about like what are the rules this team is operating under. So if you play a team sport, usually you're going to have rules. You know, you're going to have to like we have agreed upon rules before we play. All of you may be too young to know Calvin and Hobbes, but in Calvin and Hobbes they have Calvin ball, which is the sport that the kid Calvin played. And they just make up rules. Like now all of a sudden there are 10 bases. So I'm running to 5th base. So what is happening? So you may have some projects that might feel like that. So if you have rules of engagement, then you can help to keep yourself on the path, help to keep the whole team on the path and keep everyone feeling more satisfied with the project. So we came up with a couple of rules, not all the rules. Rule number 1, stay focused on the destination. So the goal, right? If we don't know what the goal is, why is this team even meeting? Is this a social club? Maybe we should just define it as that. Avoid making the same decision over and over again. A couple people mentioned team decision-making, who's in charge of the decision. So if you're remaking the same decision, that can probably feel pretty stressful. Like, why are we relitigating what we've already decided? The word decide literally means to cut off. So if you decide, those other options should be gone. And get to action quickly. So make your 100 pots, get in there and get into action. So we want we're gonna go ahead and jump to we're ready to do the Legos because it's part of that same thing. So get your Lego kits. And
Yeah. Okay, so now you're going to work in groups. We're going to practice this group work. So groups of 3, and you're going to have a minute to decide on or agree upon one rule about efficiency. And then you're going to create your own on your own set, your own efficiency interpretation, but based on that one rule you agreed upon. Okay, ready, set,
so get into groups and then we'll start.
go.
A group of
3 groups, 3
or
people.
4. 3 or 4.
3
Orange County, we got 1 minute and we're gonna regroup to do the debrief. 1 minute to go. Thirty seconds, 30 seconds.
Okay. All right, here we go. It was so interesting to walk around and see your creation. So it's time to share. Who would like to share about their rule and their results? I saw some trends in this room anyway. We'll ask Orange County if they saw any trends. In this room, there was a lot of the use of green. Several groups, green was a theme. And then height was a trend I saw in some of the rules. What else was a rule? Share what you noticed from this exercise.
So since we have a green tall group right here, tell us your rule and then hold up your tall green situations.
Yeah, I really just make the tallest one with all the green blocks. So,
The
Okay.
tallest one using all of the green blocks.
All
And
right.
they turned out very similar.
Yeah.
With that one rule. Very good. And then in the back towards the back, there was another green row. Where are the green ones back there? Yeah, what was your rule? Well, what I found interesting though is as a group, you said use one color, right? Just any kind of shapes, but one color. But then one of your people did one color, but a different color. Right? You did switch. You did switch. So sometimes the instructions are clear, but people interpret them differently. We had an all yellow and the others were green. That was an interesting observation.
So peer pressure, you want to. So it's harder to follow the team rule going
Yeah.
yellow. There you go.
Resources.
Were there any trends in Orange County? Any
Over here.
trends?
Oh.
I don't know if they could, well, something to look at.
So I see a fleet of maybe boats or islands here. Boats. Rule was a boat. The rule was a boat.
And I think we had a vehicle rule. It just could be any kind of vehicle over there. Right? Anybody have a different rule than what we've talked about? No, there was some interesting over here. Yeah.
Oh, it's a complex rule. That's the next level rule. Can't have two colors touching the same color. There you go.
Yeah, very good.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, thanks everyone for doing those. So you can see that instantly you came up with lots of different rules, and it's also interesting to see the variety you still built given those rules. So partly depending on how specific your rule is. If your rule is green and tall, then we get this forest that we had here in front. If the rule is vehicle, then we might get a helicopter and a car. It depends what vehicle is. So it's a great way to think about when you're setting your team rules. First off, agreeing on them, but also you may interpret the same rule differently. And we've talked about this in different classes. If we all agree we're going to do things as soon as possible, what does that mean? What before other priorities, as soon as I want to. So being able to really define those rules is powerful. So we're gonna wrap up by talking a little bit about behavior. And so all of you have looked at different ways for efficiency. We've talked about different team rules. So we want to focus on what is the core thing that you bring to a team, to the company, when it comes to efficiency. So what's your specialty? So we've identified a couple of examples. So you might have, so working with clients may be something you feel is just like something you're great at, connecting, building rapport, getting the documents that you need from them, those things. It could be skills, working on the systems and processes. So some people see differently the efficiency. Some people might not even notice something's inefficient, and you're just like, please, can we change this? It would help all of us so much. And then having the actual technical knowledge, so being able to understand the reality of the projects you're working on. Maybe you're great at understanding updates and things that are coming out. And so we're going to take a couple minutes here, and not with Legos, although, if you finish early, you can play with your Legos. And we're going to talk about using your strengths for your specialty. So can you tell us a little bit about how using your strengths can be an important thing here, and recognizing your strengths?
So I'm drawing a blank right now.
That's
Yeah.
So just being focused and kind of
Oh, the mindfulness piece.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So your strengths, sometimes they're apparent right off the bat, and sometimes it takes a little digging, right? And you want to identify over time your strengths so that you can come to the team or the group or the project and be able to be the one to contribute. I'm drawing a blank.
So basically you may have your strengths may not be as evident to yourself because you're you, and it's like, this is how I am. Of course I'm great at systems and processes. I've always been great at systems and processes. So taking some time to journal, to meditate, to really think through what makes you special.
Okay,
can be
I
really
see where
powerful.
we're going. We're throwing this in please forgive me, we're throwing this in a little bit out of sync. And so I drew a blank about it, but yes, okay. So when you come into a situation where you need to be your best self and be your optimal self, you want to make sure that you take a moment, okay, intentionally take a moment and pause and do whatever it is to bring out your superpower. Okay, so maybe for you, it's bust out 10 push-ups, right? Whoa, I'm pumped, I'm ready to go. For a lot of people, I hear it stand in the mirror and assume the power position and say to yourself, you got this, you got this. Or maybe it is the journaling, writing out, and maybe you have a mantra that you say or something that you repeat. Maybe it's taking a deep breath, right? Or taking a walk around the building once or twice, or the stairs, right? So it's identifying whatever action you can take to then get into your superpower so that you can approach the problem or the activity or the group in your best self, in your optimal frame of mind. So sometimes it's a physical action, sometimes it's stillness, right? And so being intentional ahead of time and making a plan ahead of time so that you can bring that in. It's kind of like a knee-jerk reaction or a default. You don't have to take brain energy to figure that out. It's already in place. And take the moment to be intentional, take charge, and then come to that group activity or meeting or project in your best self. Yes.
Yeah, because sometimes we can sort of feel like we are we're just going through the motions, and so that pattern interrupt. That's why one of the reasons we have the Mindfulness Monday that features her, and there are dozens now that you can go to, and it's pretty much whatever topic you want. It's that pattern interrupt, so you can get focused on you, your strengths, which you can really bring to the team, and dive in. So we're going to take a couple minutes. We want each of you to list out at least 3 strengths. We know you have a ton more than 3, but at least 3 strengths that you have, and we're going to look at how those can help you with efficiency for yourself and for your team. So we're going to take about 4 minutes. So we're going to take 4 minutes, write that down, and then we'll debrief as a group, and we'll get ready to go out and conquer the day.
Conversation is going to be
Yeah,
that's okay. You brought it up.
that's okay. So if we get two people to share, then this is pretty much the last time you'll get a chance to share. So if you haven't taken the opportunity, please, this is your chance. Please someone share a strength and how you'd like to apply it. Or how you could apply it. Two people separating us from lunch. You got this.
It's hard to brag on oneself, but you do have.
Yeah,
strengths. We'd like to
please.
hear. We'd like,
Communication.
Yeah.
like, Sometimes I can be an over communicator thing, instead, I guess, but. It just keeps everyone in the loop, like.
Yeah, you're conscious of communication and that could be efficient because we're moving things forward. You're making sure people are connected. Love it. One more. That's a kind of a hand. That's the most. If I were an auctioneer, I don't know that I would call on you as close. All right, what you got?
I like to think that I'm pretty approachable, so I feel like that's really helpful to client goals. It definitely helps bring out relevant information, which I think that is definitely something that I know is not easily, like, it doesn't come easy to some people, so I think that that's.
For sure. Being approachable, client care, being able to build rapport. I think that's great. And so whatever each of you wrote down, be proud of those strengths because those are strengths that not everyone in this room has and not everyone, and all the clients have. You're here for a reason and these strengths that you have to bring are valuable. And even if your strengths are quieter instead of louder or you're not sure how to apply them, just that's why we think it's good to spend time journaling and meditating on who you are and what you can really bring to the team and really let those strengths come out. So good job, everyone, writing down your strengths, and it's a great place to focus. Yeah, just trying to click the slide. Okay, so just to sum up, like we kind of nerd out about efficiency, as you can tell a little bit. I know a lot of you too obviously care about that because it has direct impacts on your ability to hit your goals for billable hours, keep clients happy and everything. So it's a great thing to focus on and meditate on. There are some spillover benefits that we like to look at for this. So it can really help your own growth path for you to focus on efficiency, because if you're able to do more projects output in the same amount of time input, then that can open up doors. Keeping your teams happier, the more you're focused on efficiency together and really focus on that vision together. And then keeping clients happy. We like that. And the more efficient we are, the more we're able to keep them happy. So we'll let you finish it up. Thanks, Evan, for your participation and go from there.
Not OSHA compliant in terms of how we have that.
Yeah.
All right, so at the beginning, we asked you guys to write down a definition of efficiency. Did anyone come up with something or something that they wanted to learn today that we didn't cover? So while we do a little recap, if something does strike you as, hey, that would be a good topic under this umbrella of today's what was covered. Always curious if somebody at the beginning wrote down something we didn't touch upon, because we try to be pretty thorough during this time period. Also, by bringing in your MDs, let you see how it applies directly to your career path, because we're not in your space. I think that's an awesome opportunity to have this variety of people come through. So I hope you find that helpful as well in this process. So we started with this definition of what is efficiency and what is your mindset around that. We used a variety of examples to help you think about how do you measure efficiency individually and as a team. You heard some great examples from one another, and even Vernalisa in talking about teamwork and making things happen as a team. And then we ended just now with recognizing your own special, unique gifts. I want to thank everyone for that opportunity of sharing in their thought on the, I just put my workbook down. There's a QR code on the cover. So we would love you guys to take a minute, use your phone and enter that. We make that a very brief survey. And thank you for your time here in Orange County. Thank you. I know Ravi and Renee are down there helping, so thanks for that. And if you guys come up with anything else or want to share with us, we appreciate that feedback and have a wonderful afternoon.
Bring your Lego kits back next time. We'll use them again.
Yeah, we intend to use the Lego kits throughout the round.